Public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during a discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comments. And just a general reminder for our group process that we're trying to take turns and not interrupt each other and give everyone a chance to speak. That concludes the mission statement. Carrie, would you be so kind as to do the roll call, please?
Sure. Hold on just a second. All right. So we'll start with the chair. Chairs, Kenna Lee. I see you. You're on mute, but I see you. Joshua Somin.
Sure, thank you.
Please correct me with your names until I get to know them if I mispronounce. Luke Lindenbush.
Here.
Diana Rich.
Here.
Sarah Gurney.
I'm here, thank you.
Woody Hastings.
Here.
Jerry Glazer. Sarah Elliott. Here. Hold on just a second. Alex Goodman.
Here.
And Sonalia is gone. Dina Allen.
Here.
And Lisa Pierce.
Here.
All right, so everyone is in attendance except for Sunali.
Sounds great. Thanks everyone for being here again. We didn't tap anybody specifically for inspiration today, so I'll take that point. I'm just going to talk about a little bit of work I've been doing in the Walbridge and Glass burn zones. Part of my organization that I work with is a nonprofit, and we've been doing a fair amount of bioremediation in the burn zones with funding to protect the creeks. And so that's a process of going in several times since last fall through the winter, and now I'm going back to check on some sites that we've done again, a lot of trying to keep toxic materials out of the creek, excess runoff, burned materials, that sort of thing. And then there's all these other agencies and they're doing logging and clearing the materials from the house site. And it's been a really interesting process for me to see all these places that were people's retreats or dream homes or their, family home now, burned to the ground, and in a lot of cases, piles of toxic slag. Whether we're talking really expensive, fancy, out at the end of the road, perched on the knoll kind of houses, and also, complexes of shacks with lots of cars out in the woods and that sort of thing. And it's been at times really disheartening and overwhelming to see the condition that development, pushing into the urban or the wildlands, the effect that has on the land, and the way that people's decisions play out in the long term with these climate-driven factors that are coming in these days. But it's also been nice to see people rally together and try to do the right thing by the cleanup. And these days you can really see parts of the forest understory recovering well. And I've talked to a lot of landowners and been able to give them just a way to confront the situation and start to chip away at making it better again. And so for me, it reflects that a part of my work is helping people come into a better relationship with the land around them, helping people to understand how to better take care of these places that they love. Some people really welcome that. Some initially are resistant to it, but I would say that in a crisis like this, there's a great opportunity for people to change their perspective, adopt new behaviors, and move forward. And I think that that's part of the role of our group, really, is to try to get the word out there and help people understand how they can do more to protect the land around that takes care of us in so many ways. So that is my thought for the day. The review of action items from last meeting was pretty light. We passed along the AB 965 recommendation, and Woody and Carrie, we're taking that towards the City Council. I know that process has been well underway. And then just to say that in an ongoing fashion, we're all welcome to keep looking at the equity framework and trying to enhance the usability of that. And that's, we're all in a position to continue to send feedback back to that working group. I believe that concludes the review of previous items, unless anyone can think of anything else. Now, are there any comments from the public regarding items not on today's agenda or just general comments in that respect? Zeno, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just want to thank you all for showing up every other week and doing this important work. Thank you.
Likewise, I'm sure. Okay. Any statements of conflicts of interest with respect to the items on today's agenda from any members? Okay, thanks for that. All right, on to our regular agenda for today's meeting. The first one, item A, is something that came up in a conversation in this meeting previously, and just seemed like something to put out to everybody and brainstorm a little bit. The subject is about what other regional organizations, groups, should we kind of be keeping track of and keeping in touch with? The first one that came up, obviously, is RCPA, where Sarah Gurney is, I believe, our liaison there. We've had a couple of meetings, both on the large scale and on the smaller scale, with Tanya Harding there. So RCPA is certainly one. It seems like the Zero Waste Sebastopol group, similarly, Sarah has a liaison position there, and we're already in collaboration with them to some extent on the Upcycled Art project. And so now this is a time just for anybody else. This is sort of a brainstorming session of people know of other organizations that we feel that we should be keeping in touch with and checking in with periodically. If so, what suggestions do we have for who might be able to help us with that periodic check-in? Diana, I see you have a hand there.
Yeah, I put into the list Zero Waste Sonoma. I'm Sebastopol's appointee to that regional group, and I'd be happy to report out as this group needs. Thanks.
Great. Carrie, yes.
And Joshua, just one note, it's maybe a little overlap, but the RCPA does also have a members and partners meeting, which is more the staff level version of coordination with the RCPA. And so I did actually go to a meeting on Monday. I've been going to those meetings, and then Alan was going to those previously. So we have updates at a staff level if needed. There's also a chance if there are questions that you have in terms of what other cities are doing. For instance, the gas station ordinance, I did ask for materials from others who might be working on that, so that we're not starting from ground zero on that type of thing.
Great, thank you. I guess with respect to organizations like RCPA, I would welcome, Carrie, your opinion, and Sarah, yours as well. I'm not sure if we should plan on getting a quarterly update, or maybe when something comes up in those meetings and you feel that it's relevant to us, you could just sort of suggest that there is something to report from that level. Does that seem reasonable, or do you feel like we should calendarize it a little more rigorously?
I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do it on a regular basis if people here thought it was important. I report to the council after every meeting, so that's a once a month thing already. I think maybe Carrie's meetings are once a month as well. And another point of networking, we also have Zeno here, who's coming from the Citizens Advisory Action Committee to the RCPA. So he's networking for us as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we're very well covered on the RCPA front, thankfully. What about, does anybody have any contact with other city groups or nonprofits? I mean, aside from the obvious Climate Center with Woody, who's definitely bringing those items across. Are there other city groups or nonprofits that people think of that it might be worth checking in with?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that can perhaps remain an open subject. Woody, please. Anything?
Well, yeah, I think there's probably a lot that we could check in with over time. You didn't include regional agencies. I think at first I heard regional agencies, so something like the Bay Area Air Management District, and they do have some climate related imperatives. And there's Sonoma Clean Power. And so is that the kind of thing? And I think I heard Diana or someone say there's a list that she added. Maybe I missed a memo or something, but no, there's no list. Okay. All right. But anyway, so those kinds of agencies as well, like the Air District and Sonoma Clean Power and Sonoma Water, there's lots of things, I think.
Okay.
And then, organizations, there's Climate Center, there's, I think we're kind of connected to 350 already to some extent. And there's the acts. Yeah, so.
Okay, we're starting to get an expansive list here. Jerry.
There's Seamless Bay Area as well, who's been working on how do we get transit to work. And then there's the Metropolitan Transit Authority, which is trying to put multiple authorities together as well, which is also part of, I think, is that working with ABAG? Is that how that works now? Are they both now one and the same?
Okay. I'm sorry, what was the first organization you said? Something Bay Area?
I think it's called Seamless Bay Area. I get their newsletter on a weekly basis. Okay. What they've been working on is how do we get a fare if we're leaving from Sebastopol and we want to go to San Jose? And how would I get from point A to point B, pay one fare, and have the transit all be coordinated?
Where the buses and other units all match up in their schedules, because we have, I think, something like 39 operators in the 9 Bay Area counties. It's phenomenal. On a regional level, I'm working on the future of public transit with the RCPA.
Okay, because once I moved up here, I thought that was kind of crazy because we have Santa Rosa, we have the county, we have
Petaluma.
Petaluma, and then we also have Golden Gate. They're all operating in the same area.
Okay. Well, as noted, we're starting to get to a fairly hefty list here, which I think is a good thing in general. I would suggest as a working process that folks are welcome to, suggest that we interface with these groups. If you hear anything that we're doing or that they're doing that is relevant to our work, you could either contact me and I'll try to field a way to interface with that organization if there isn't one already obviously existing. Announcements from them, as with most things, can be sent to Carrie, who can forward that to everybody in our committee. In some cases, it sounds like the focus of those organizations is going to be relevant to a particular working group with respect to, for instance, transportation or energy or those sorts of factors. So in those cases, it might be helpful to have a point person on the working group, kind of vetting or coordinating that connection with an organization that's sort of aligned with their area of focus. So no hard and fast rules there, just some general notions about how we might move forward and that in general, cross-pollination and looking at the groups, the other groups that are doing similar work is going to be very productive for us in the longer term. Does anybody have further suggestions or comments on this subject in general at this time, including members of the public? Or... Okay, Sino, yes.
I think the Petaluma group, the City Council Petaluma, is most active and most detailed. And it would be really good to be more in tune with them. We could share, we know that we have the RCPA contacts with Petaluma, but I think it's good to check in with like Peach or other people that are active in Petaluma, because they really, they study every day, they're very focused, they have great ideas, and I think we could make some kind of Sebastopol-Petaluma alliance, because it seems we both want to go in the same direction.
Okay, that sounds great. Certainly we've seen good things coming out of Petaluma. Kenna, do you have further comment?
I was going to ask Luke. I know Luke was going to reach out to Pete near, when we kind of first started this, if you're in any kind of ongoing conversation with Pete already.
Yeah, I've been in touch with Pete. I actually also work with Pete on housing in my full-time job as well. So happy to continue working with him, discussing with him. I definitely agree with Zeno that Petaluma networks are really extensive. I've also been in contact with Petaluma Climate Commissioner Panama Bartholomew as well. And I think there's just ample room for this committee in general to look at what the Petaluma Climate Group has done and how they've really been able to hit the ground running and get a lot of great work done over about 18 months and kind of use that as a roadmap on albeit a smaller scale. So thank you, Zeno, for the comment.
That sounds great. I think the point's really well taken. I guess I would ask a favor. It sounds like a couple of you already know some people who are active in the Petaluma group. If you would perhaps reach out to them and ask if they would be willing to come to one of our committee meetings and just to do a little summary discursive, like how has their process been? Doesn't have to be anything too formal, just sort of a little bit of storytelling about what they've been through. If there's any advice off hand that they can provide to us or any useful templates that they think might be relevant. Once you found a person who says that they are potentially willing to come to one of these meetings, just send them along to the facilitation team and we can get them on an agenda at some point. That would be excellent to hear from them. So, okay, thanks. Anybody else, any further comments or suggestions on this subject? That was really nice and robust. So thanks again. Okay, our next item B, this is the discussion or something or other of the proposal for an upgrade of the gas station that is just across the Laguna Bridge. Now, I want to say at the outset, we may not have to do anything about this. I just wanted to give the subject some justice in committee because it's something we've been hearing about for a few meetings. So essentially, the intent for today is that Carrie is just going to give us a status report on the nature of the project and the situation. And then we can see if we feel that we need to take a position or do research on it, whether that would go to a particular working group as is likely, et cetera. So we're not trying to make any decisions today so much as scratch the surface, get an overall sense of it. Jerry, do you have a comment before Carrie?
No, just ask a question. Was there a handout on that or?
No,
or not? Okay.
This is sort of, again, it's been almost in a rumor status, at this point. If you decide, I've heard a little bit more, but this is kind of our introductory session right now. So, Carrie, if you'd be so kind.
Sure, and I'm happy to, it's an open process. But to be clear, they have not applied for this yet. So this is the Chevron station, which is just east of the Laguna Bridge on Highway 12. The very last parcel in the city. They came to the city and submitted what's called a pre-application meeting, which is really a discussion with the various departments all in a room to understand any requirements for a potential project before it's sort of the really early go, no-go stage for someone to understand the technical requirements. What they are interested in doing is, well, first off, I'll say they're not proposing to expand the gas station portion of it at all. That would remain the same. What they are looking to do is rebuild one of their structures. Right now they have they have a lot of sort of outdoor storage and things like that, as well as their main structure, which is the whole site is within the floodplain. And so what they want to do is rebuild the structure, I believe, slightly larger, get rid of some of the extra, smaller sheds and things that are on the parcel. Flood proof it appropriately so that they don't get flood damage for that. And I believe at a cafe or some sort of smaller food service, not a sit down cafe, but the general kind of walk in, get some sort of food, coffee kind of thing that you see in gas stations. They technically would need to upgrade their septic system and potentially their well. And those would both be permitted through Sonoma County. The city does not permit. We have some residential parcels. I believe they're probably the only commercial parcel that is on septic just because of its location. And then we have a few people who are on wells, but not very many. It's easier to get water to people than it is sewer. service. So, but they used to be on city water, but that pipe went away at some point, and the infrastructure is no longer there with the Highway Toll Bridge. So they have some logistical challenges with that part that they're working at technically. But in terms of the project, should it move forward, a couple of things about that. I did talk to them, and they are interested in adding EV chargers if they do that, and potentially working with the city to enhance the shared property line between the connection to Meadowlark Field and the parcel. I sort of brought that up as the sort of weird no man's land, and it'd be great to kind of formalize and improve that a bit. While most of that isn't their property, I think they'd be happy to work with us on that. If they do submit the project, it would require a use permit. So currently gas stations in the city of Sebastopol require a use permit approved through a public hearing process by the Planning Commission. So we would get a formal submittal, and I can certainly route that to this group as well for review and comment if they do end up submitting the project. And then, this committee can certainly do what it is in terms of any letters of support or letter opposing the project. The Planning Commission will be the ultimate body. A Planning Commission decision is appealable to the City Council should either party, either the applicant or a member of the public, not be happy with the Planning Commission's determination.
Great, thank you. So let's see, if I could reflect back my understanding, it sounds like there's not really an expansion except of the store. There is a substantial portion of retrofitting the systems and the utilities to be more flood resistant, which sounds like a very good thing always around. The project will be subject to many kinds of review in the future, so we can weigh in again in the future. I guess at this time, I would like to throw it open to comments and questions from anybody on the committee. Just a reminder, we are not obligated to take a position on this, but we have the opportunity to have some involvement or feedback if we choose to do so. Potentially deeper research could be done by the energy and or transportation groups if they wanted to dive deeper into it. But again, at this time, does anybody have comments or questions? Okay, super easy. Are there any comments or Sarah, is that a hand? No, okay. Are there any comments or questions from members of the public at this time? Okay. All right. Well, I guess I might, in closing, ask Carrie that, if they do make a formal proposal, that we hear about it from some angle again in the future. But at this time, I think we're all comfortable with the existence of this project. Is that reasonable?
And I can certainly do that. And just one note, if it's approved by the Planning Commission, they would also need design review by our design review board for the actual structure of it. But that's usually the latter step. They need permission to do it first before we would do that part of the process. Okay. Would your educated guess be that this is still months in the future in terms of motion on this? I think they are trying to work out some of the technical details. So I know they are interested in it, but this is actually something that they had talked to me about probably 6 months before COVID started. So it's really difficult to know how, where some people will just come really early, knowing that they're going to do it in 2 years and then do it really quickly and then they do it. Some people just take that long in between each step. So it's really difficult to know. I do know that they have engaged an engineering firm to work with, when they originally talked to me, it was just the owners. They have now engaged an engineering firm to deal with the sewer and all of those types of things. That's usually an indication that they're working to move forward if they can overcome those, figure out those logistics. So I would say we'd probably get a application in the next 3 months, maybe. Then staff has a month-long review period for completeness. But we can so within that time frame, we'll probably have a meeting where I can at least give you a heads up on the application. Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, and I guess as that calendar begins to develop, and presumably a city review, planning review, design review, et cetera, maybe there's some opportunity in there for us to just have a look at the details at that time. So, all right, thanks again. Diana?
Yeah, I just had a question, Carrie. On our city website, you often have details regarding major projects. As this project moves forward, is this one that would be included in that major projects list on the website?
We certainly can. We have a couple metrics where anything larger than 10 units definitely goes up. Anything dwelling units, anything larger than, well, anything larger than 10,000 square feet requires a 30-day on-site notice. Those big blue billboards you all saw for the hotel Sebastopol and whatnot. But we tend to put anything larger than 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, or that we know will be a community priority, on there. So yes, I can certainly, when and if it comes in, I can certainly have that added to that. Then that's on the planning website. There's a section called special projects and notices. And so that's where that information resides for larger projects.
Okay, yeah, I'd put it out to the group to say whether you feel like this is, as a group, we feel it's important enough to post on the website. But it certainly seems like it's going to attract attention, and there might be a need for public information.
Agreed. All right. Any further comment or questions on the gas station proposal from anyone on the committee or anyone in the general public at this time, or the not so general public, as the case may be? Okay. Thanks, everyone. Moving on. Our next item, C, is the Sebastopol smart meter proposal, which is coming from the Energy Working Group. I hope everyone had a chance to review the preliminary handout that was sent along from that group, along with the agenda. So obviously this is a subject that the city has some history with, and that can be a hot button for some folks. I guess I would say that if we could have an initial explication from the Energy Working Group, just a summary for those who might not be deep in the details as they are, and then we can have some discussions and comment thereafter. So let's see, I don't want to point fingers on that one, but Lisa, thank you.
All right, thank you. So I'm not sure really if I should, I don't think I should read the document. It's fairly short, but at the same time, it's pretty concise. So I guess I'm just a show of hands, maybe, who read it over, and I'm just wondering how to proceed. All right, that's great. So this is basically, we're trying to get the word out that there are some benefits for the climate attached to smart meters, and we're really not addressing the safety concerns that some people have about smart meters. We're really just focusing on the climate benefits, and there's quite a few. There's people who would like to have them in the city, and for various reasons, for incentives, for upgrading appliances and that sort of thing. So I guess I'm just wondering, first off, if anybody has any questions after looking at the document. Not really.
Lisa, can I make one clarification about what we're proposing?
Please do.
So we're simply proposing this, is that the city council make a statement to PG&E that if citizens asked for a smart meter, that they would respect the request of those citizens. We're not asking PG&E to go ahead and install smart meters throughout the city, but this way that gives PG&E some coverage when they go to do an install and saying, well, it said, we were asked by a number of people, city council said that's okay if they were requested and this person requested. So that gives people coverage on this and tries to take some of the politics out of it.
Thank you, Jerry. That's a really important point. Yes. So, yes, Joshua.
Just a question on the technical side of it. I know for myself, for instance, we put in solar panels in a battery system and we had to upgrade to a smart meter for the net metering and logistics on that. Are most of the climate benefits that you're discussing related to that live net metering function of the smart meters? Is that the primary benefit?
Alicia, let me pick that one up too. Okay.
Sure.
And by the way, you don't have to have a smart meter for net metering. I've had a net metering and time of use metering since 2004. There are meters that do that. So, but there are a lot of benefits beyond that. And that is that you can change schedules without changing meters and interrupting service. And that's happening fairly rapidly these days. That's part of the reasons I think they wanted the smart meters. Essentially, smart meters are not smart compared to the other meters. They're dumb. All they do is report on a regular basis what this is. The smart part's in a database back at the utility. And so they can change the schedules rapidly to respond to the needs that we have in the environment, which they just did recently with EV2A, for instance, to take the place of things like E9, E6, et cetera. I traveled south just recently and found out in the southern part of the state, everybody's had smart meters now for 5-6 years. And so, and there's not an incidence of people getting sick that anybody's reported so far about that. But the other thing you get with the smart meter is you get automatic reporting. And if you wanted to diagnose how you're using electricity in your house, even if you don't have solar, it tells you hour by hour how you've used electricity. And so you can actually refine your own house. And I've done that here. Refine your own house and say, oh, between 10 and 11, I'm using a lot of power every day. I wonder what that is. And you can figure that out and then tune it down.
Yeah, I think that that's one aspect. And then there's also a substantial amount of money that is available for people who want to put in a heat pump, hot water heater, or get an electric car charger, all those kinds of things. There's a lot of money out there for incentives from Sonoma Clean Power, and Sebastopol residents right now are not able to access that. And so I think more people would be making those shifts if they were able to get the incentives.
Certainly.
Yes.
I see hands from Diana and Kenna.
I had a very quick question. I see in the report, Lisa, that you say Sebastopol residents are not able to get smart meters installed. Have you tested that? Has anyone in this group actually called PG&E to ask for a smart meter to be installed? And
Yes.
what were you told, out of curiosity?
I can answer that question. You want to answer too, or?
Well, I think we
Yeah.
have the same answer. We were told
Yeah.
Sebastopol we are not installing any new smart meters in Sebastopol at this time.
Oh, mine was more explicit. Mine was, we are not allowed to install
Right.
smart meters in Sebastopol. They won't allow us to do that. And we asked when we moved in, we asked 1 year later, we asked when we upgraded electricity. And in each case, they went and did the research. So this was not just on the phone. They said, no, you can't.
Mhm.
They went and checked up through their management to find out. And the only reason I have one today is somebody came to check what my reading was because the normal reader wasn't here and had to come in. And I said, I'm so frustrated, I can't get a smart meter. And he said, I've got one in the truck. You want me to install it?
Really?
I believe that I have one, but just
Go
saying.
check.
Anyway.
So I think it's really
I
important
think
to be
I was
clear.
next, Sarah.
Pardon me?
I think I
Yeah.
was next. I wanted to clarify what Lisa said about the incentives. So that Lisa, I really pushed her on this because she was saying you can't get incentives. And I'm like, you can get incentives. So, but she did find incentives that you can't get without a smart meter, even though there are still a lot of incentives that people in Sebastopol without smart meters can get. There is a slice of the incentives that are not available to people without smart meters.
Yeah, pretty substantial part of the pie. There's some Bayren incentives that you can get without a smart meter, but the ones from Sonoma Clean Power require a smart meter. And those are the ones that are listed on the document, the ones that require.
Sarah, did you have more to add there?
Well, I was just going to say, and Jerry and I have talked about this at a previous meeting. If you asked our city manager or city attorney, it's very clear there is no moratorium. That was long ago history. The situation of relationship with PG&E is that a customer just needs to ask. The city isn't doing anything affirmatively to stand in the way. That's the city manager, city attorney remark. Now, PG&E may not like dealing with our citizens because of that past history, but there's no affirmative positioning by the city that is keeping them out. There's no reminder for that. Jerry,
Go ahead.
The reason for the statement, the way that we did it, was the discussion that you and I had, and then making the clarification with PG&E so that they have coverage, and there's a recent statement that they can rely on.
Yeah. Because we don't.
Who's up there? I
Did
saw
you
Diana.
think something, Joshua?
Both had hands up. I'm not sure who's first, but please feel free.
Go ahead, Kenna. I'll wait.
Just that I think it might be technically accurate according to the city attorney that there's no moratorium, but the moratorium was never repealed by the council, and the council sent a letter in 2019, which is not that long ago, reaffirming the intent of the moratorium, even though the moratorium at that point had already been made legally moot. So I don't think it's really practically accurate to say that because the moratorium has no legal value, it doesn't have a real value, which the real value is they're still not installing smart meters in Sebastopol. So it does exist in fact, even though it doesn't exist legally. Does that make sense?
Sure. Okay. Diana and then Woody, I believe.
So I just had a suggestion that we might pursue, and also a question. So first, the question: are there other what are other jurisdictions in Sonoma County doing regarding smart meters?
Lisa, please.
We are the only jurisdiction in the county that has any restrictions.
Interesting. Okay. And then my question, which I might consider pursuing with Carrie and Sarah, is to the extent perhaps there's a need for the city to have a clarifying conversation with PG&E so that PG&E no longer misrepresents the city's position, because it sounds like PG&E is misrepresenting the city's position on smart meters. So I think that would be, Carrie, I see you.
Yeah, I think PG&E is trying to respect the wishes of Sebastopol in general, I think is what they're trying to do. And so I think that's where if there's someone willing to take a stand and say, we're actually not prohibiting them, it's up to the individual homeowner. That would be the clarification that they probably need, especially with the 2019 communication. And I do know one of the questions that may be a little bit more difficult is for owners of a multifamily property, because then the tenant necessarily, I'm thinking of things like a condo subdivision where they may be split. And of course that condo group could vote, or like the First Class Mobile Home part. I do know that came up. A number of the residents there did not want the smart meters. And so that may actually be where the 2019 letter came in, trying to assist that group of residents. So.
Okay, and I do not see the 2019 letter as part of this packet, but I'm assuming that if I email you, Carrie, you can send that to me.
I can figure out where it is. I don't know. It didn't actually come from planning, but I'm sure I can find it from somebody.
I'd like to acknowledge that Woody's had his hand up for a while. Woody, did you have a comment?
I do. I think given what we just heard about the ambiguous status or sort of unclear status of the moratorium, I think if this document is, this proposal is going to the full council, the third short paragraph that says the moratorium still exists, I think there might just need to be a little bit more, sort of unpacking there, explanation a little bit more, and perhaps, depending on what Carly digs up, the 2019 communication, just having a better explanation of what the status is in this proposal is the thought.
Okay, Sarah, and then Dina, and then Jerry, I believe.
Thank you. There was a question a while ago, I think it was Diana, about other cities in Sonoma County. What are other cities doing? The only other city that I'm aware of that's not wanting smart meters actively is Fairfax in Marin County. And I was only reminded of that today, talking to a neighbor who wants a smart meter. So.
Clearly noted. Dina?
I think we have it here because we have some very adamant people that don't mind speaking up that they're against them. A few of them are my friends. I'm sorry, City Council, but I feel like you're gonna get heat about whose rights are more important, people that want them and people that don't when they live really close next door to each other. And I don't know what the answer is with that. I just feel that it would keep coming up. And also, we've had solar for a really long time. And just in the last year, we got a smart meter. And the PG&E guy did explain to me, if I didn't want it, what my cost would be. So there still is that unfair thing that if you pick one and not the other, you have another cost. So I think there's probably pushback on that from some people too.
Jerry?
Just a clarification to Woody's point. Woody, the proposal is actually the first statement. The rest of this is just background for the committee to understand what we found so far. So if the one statement seems to be ambiguous, it's easy to take it away, because really the proposal would be that we send a recommendation to the city council that, and it's that action item, that they inform PG&E that they can respect or should respect requests by citizens in Sebastopol to install a smart meter if they so requested. I didn't know about the additional cost, that's interesting, because I hadn't run across that, because I have other PG&E properties and I've never run across what the additional cost would be for using the meters that were not smart meters, because I had those originally because the smart meters weren't there. So that was interesting. Maybe Lisa knows something about it. And also in the document here, someplace, Lisa found something, and maybe when you speak, you can say what it was, the number of smart meters which are currently installed in Sebastopol, which makes the whole confusion somewhat a moot point as far as whether we should allow it or not, because I believe there's just about as many smart meters in Sebastopol as there are residents in Sebastopol, though they're not in every home. It's a very large number of meters already installed.
Kenna? You're muted.
I can address your point, Jerry, about the cost, and also the number of smart meters installed. So that number, I believe, that we have of smart meters installed does not designate whether those are electric smart meters or gas smart meters. And they are two different issues, especially according to the health impacts. So I don't think we can really go off number of smart meters installed until we get the breakdown of whether those are electric or gas meters. The cost is $10 a month times 3 years, and then you don't have to pay anymore. If you're in an area where PG&E decides to go ahead and install all smart meters and you want to keep your non-smart meter, then the cost of keeping that meter is $10 a month for 3 years. So I appreciate Dina bringing that forward as an equity issue, because once we open, I think the Energy Committee is trying to approach this from the least political approach and kind of get in the door that way. But the potential ramification of that would be that PG&E would say, okay, now we're in the door. We want to put smart meters in everyone's home. We're going to start charging the people who don't want them. And then there's going to be a lot more smart meters, which means that the health effects versus climate effects decision is real. And I think that is a real decision. And that that's the council's decision to make. And our decision to make on this committee is, do we think there are enough benefits to smart meters for the climate that we want to bring it to council to have them make this kind of bigger decision of, are the benefits to the climate worth the potential equity impacts or health impacts of smart meters going along? And it's an existential question. It's not really one that I would want to try to answer, but you could do a lot of research and come up with a lot of different answers depending on how you read the research. But I think that the council declared a climate emergency, and then that puts some burden on the council to prioritize the climate effects. So it's a difficult question. It's not easy.
Thank you. Dina, I noticed that your hand symbol is still on. Did you have something further to add?
Sorry, I forgot to unhand myself.
Okay, just checking. If so, it had been a while. So, okay, let's see. I have Lisa, I think Zeno, and Sarah. So perhaps Lisa first, if you please.
Oh, thanks. Let's see if I can remember. We really are hoping that it's just on a as requested basis for the smart meters. That $10 a month fee is basically the cost of a meter reader coming to your house. People who have the smart meters, it could be looked at as you're getting a price break because you're not having to pay a meter reader to go and read your meter in person. Let's see, there was something else too, but now I forgot. I'm sorry. That'll be it for now.
Thanks. It'll come back around, I'm sure. Sarah?
Hey, thank you. I was just checking on information that Dante sent me so that we're aware. The city is doing a comprehensive energy audit right now, and Dante is indicating that it's going to be done really soon. So this is an energy audit that includes meter replacement, and I think he's meaning water meters in that instance, and also looking at our water usage. So I'm thinking the results of this energy audit will be coming back to the city, and perhaps that's an opportunity for some public discussion of this issue and questions to the council if there were a strategy to raise this issue without it being a direct request. I'm looking right now to see if I can find a date when that's agendized, but I haven't found it yet.
Okay. Special commentary from our public member on this subject, Zeno.
Excuse me. Yeah, two things. So this was a moratorium. That means a temporary stop, right? So the city should have studied this and made a final decision. And maybe because it was illegal or you couldn't really stop this, that they kind of let it drop. But in good procedure, I think the city is kind of obliged to its citizen to make up its mind around this, to decide whether this moratorium leads to further action on the part of the city according with respect to smart meters. Then the other thing, I think we all know this is a sensitive issue in town, but a good crisis should never be wasted. You should always take advantage of this. So I think this could be a slingshot for climate, right? This is an issue that people already have talked about, and now it is put in a new context. And so this is an opportunity to mobilize the citizens around climate. Yeah, so if this committee decides to push this further, be prepared, have a great handout, have people that can do talking points, because this is an opportunity to bring this issue about electrification and how to manage this complicated new regime around batteries, solar power, the bigger grid, the margin of the grid that we live on, issues of forest fires all together in a pregnant and focused discussion. So I would say we need to decide on this. It's a moratorium, so we need to decide what we're going to do with the moratorium. And then we should embrace this as an opportunity to get a deeper conversation going around climate.
Thank you, Zena. Sarah, did you have something further?
Well, yeah, I'm just going to say again, there is no moratorium. So that's an approach that I think just needs to be updated, as Lisa and Jerry have both expressed this request. To approach it with the words that they've used, I think it's a much more receptive hearing. But to say the city is living with a moratorium when it isn't, it's just, I think, I don't know, bad practice or something. Let's just be current. Let's be current, let's be current. And Zeno has made a very, I think, relevant suggestion for a current approach.
Okay. I see Diana and Jerry, and I'm going to put myself in the stack as well.
I think Jerry was next.
Fair. Thank you, Jerry.
Well, actually, I'd like to make a motion and then we can discuss the motion. How's that sound? Is that okay with the chair?
I guess I would like to put in a couple of comment or questions before the motion.
Well, you can see the questions happen when you open up the discussion to start with, then you make a motion, then you discuss the motion.
Well, I don't want
and
to.
You can make the comments on that, and we can change the motion as we go along.
Yeah, I don't want to discuss your motion yet, Jerry. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine. I'll wait.
Previously, therefore, I would like to say beforehand. Just one question. I'm not sure about the granularity of PG&E's meter installation data, whether they're making a distinction between Sebastopol zip code addresses versus Sebastopol city limits addresses. So I have no way to answer that. I see a nodding. Lisa, does that mean they are making that distinction and the data is clear? Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Secondly, I see that essentially the Energy Working Group is asking the city to clarify their relationship with PG&E and to clarify that there is no moratorium. I'm not sure whether that needs to be taken up in a formal and public fashion, or whether, sort of the right person at the city calls the right person at PG&E and says, hey, by the way, this isn't really in effect anymore. We notice that some people have had trouble with this. So I think my question there is, does this need to be pursued in a very formal and announcement quality of sending letters, or can it just be, we call somebody up and say, hey, there isn't really a moratorium. Can we just get on with it when people ask?
You are talking about the motion I'm about to make. That's when you make the argument.
Diana, did you have something?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I'm interested in where this discussion is going, but because it almost, so in terms of a proposal, if you were to submit this particular proposal to the city council, I would be concerned that it would be a lightning rod, and that what would happen is there would just be conflict, because it does, say, okay, smart meters, let's say that they're okay. However, looking at, so in terms of engaging public comment about this issue, currently in the context of what Zeno was saying and what others have said, which is it's climate action. There's a new reason, which is probably more an urgent issue than would have been dealt with in 2019 when the city council apparently sent a letter to PG&E. So how do you, is this a work study topic? How do you gather information to share with the public in order to then bring the city council along to see it in a different way? This is really a question that I would bump over to Sarah Gurney, because she has history here and understands how this might be best approached within the context of our very engaged citizenry and a history of honestly very determined concern about the health implications. So that's the first thing. I would ask Sarah Gurney to weigh in on what's the best approach for engaging our citizenry on this topic in an open way so that they can then engage in this issue. The point on your suggestion, or whoever it was, I think it may have been you, Joshua, about just approaching once again PG&E. When I made that suggestion, I was not aware of the 2019 letter. To the extent that there is a 2019 letter from the City Council saying, hopefully respect our boundaries on meters, I don't think that's going to work so well. Anyway, that's where I'm at. Would love to hear from Sarah Gurney if you think that would be worthwhile. Thanks.
Thank you. In terms of the queue, we have Jerry and Woody. In terms of our overall timeline, it would be great if we could reach closure on this topic in about 10 minutes or so. So the notion of turning this into an action item or something that we can push forward in the calendar would be appropriate at this part of the discussion. Jerry, please.
Yeah, I'm not interested in putting it on the calendar. It's on the calendar already, and that's what we're having in the meeting today. I'd like to make a motion. If you want to argue against the motion, which is part of what you did, part of what Sarah just finished doing, then you argue against the motion. My motion is this. I move that the committee forward to the City Council a recommendation that they send a note to PG&E that states the following. Many PG&E customers in the city of Sebastopol have requested that smart meters be installed with their utility service. The city of Sebastopol would like PG&E to comply with the requests of those customers asking for this change to their service. That's my motion.
All right. Woody and Kenna.
You need a second, right?
Anyone is welcome to second if we're
A second.
Are we trying to get a straw vote on this before any further discussion, or do we have some comments from Woody and Kenna? There we go.
Why can't we follow parliamentary procedure and have the discussion on the motion instead of straw votes? Unless we need a straw vote, you don't have to get consensus, right?
You're not in Parliament. You're not facilitating. I appreciate your interest in this agenda item, but there's a bunch of people in effect here. Woody, please, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thanks. Yeah, and I mean, it was prior to the motion being made, and so I'm not, speaking to the motion. I wanted to express a few things, and I think I'll cut it down given the time constraint. I think the main one, and it's most relevant to the motion, because I'm inclined to support the motion. I'd want to hear it again. It went kind of fast and it's a little long, but anyway. I think that the intention of our equity assessment matrix or whatever is that every proposal that would come forward has been screened through that assessment tool. I don't know if that has been done, but I think I would want to see that has happened and that's kind of coming forward with, with the proposal. If that's been done, great, we'd like to see it. If not, it should be done and sort of discussed prior to us, I think, voting to send it forward. And then the other thing that I'll mention is that aware that the city was doing an energy audit. Maybe others were aware of that, but I think that's something this committee would be interested in sort of knowing a little bit about. So if we could get that energy audit information onto our plates. That's a thought there. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Woody. Kenna.
So in light of Woody's comment, my response to the motion would be to say it needs to go back to the energy group to produce the equity matrix. But I think the energy group could use a little input from the larger committee on who are we considering as communities affected. I think there's been some reluctance on the part of the energy working group, myself included, to poke the bear of the anti-smart meter community or the EMF concerned community. I think that's a more equitable way to say that. And so maybe a little input on who you would like us as the Energy Working Group to include in the matrix. And then I think the other thing that could be really valuable for this, because of the little political nature, and looking at Zeno's comment of, okay, we're bringing this forward as a way to get people on board, it's also potentially a way to alienate people. And so if our first kind of big public, like we're going to get people on board to electrification, is embroiled with a lot of conflicted messaging around whether the projects that we're trying to move forward are good for the community or not, I just think we have to be careful. So I'm curious if the education outreach committee might want to just chew on it for a couple of weeks and say, this is our input on how this fits into our strategies of how we want to engage the community to get on board with larger projects, and maybe not be as vulnerable to, or how can we reduce our vulnerability to just confusing messaging or anti-electrification messaging.
Duly noted. Luke.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to note as a process point, I think everybody should, as we're discussing items, I would just say I would hope that everybody feels comfortable making motions at any time, and that discussion can continue. And as long as there's no further discussion, then a vote can be taken. I also want to say too, if you second something, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to vote for it. It might just be an indicator that you think the motion warrants further discussion. So I just wanted to put that out there as a process point. And if there's any further clarity that's needed, I hope we can reach it.
Thank you. Lisa, do you have further on?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there are very few places in the country that have not already gone with complete smart metering. We're one of the very few last places. So just for people to be aware of that.
Sure. All right. Any further discussion or questions on specifically the motion to forward this to City Council for getting ready for a vote on that motion? Anyone else? Okay. At this time, I would like to take a vote on Jerry's proposal that we encourage the City Council to move this notification to PG&E forward. Just to recognize there's also the countering notion of perhaps working on it a little bit more before that time of pushing it forward. So initially,
Joshua, I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I had seen Lisa Pierce's hand up. Did she get her comment in?
I believe
okay.
she did. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. So I'm sorry, Luke, additional comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to check. There was, Woody had asked to hear the motion again. So if there was a chance we could do that.
Certainly.
I can read it to you. The Climate Committee recommends to the city, to City Council, that they communicate with PG&E and tell them many PG&E customers in the city of Sebastopol have requested that smart meters be installed with their utility service. The city of Sebastopol would like PG&E to comply with the requests of those customers asking for this change to their service. By the way, that's the first two paragraphs of the write-up that Lisa sent in.
Right, so. All right, at this time, we would like to see hands up for a little while for all in favor of that motion.
I see. Thank you, Alex. I see 4 hands.
I see 4.
So 4 of 12 means the motion fails.
I believe a quorum in our group is 7. All right.
I have just a point of order. Don't you need to look for those that object and those that abstain? And if they abstain, would it be the majority, or it has to be a majority of everybody in the meeting?
If you'd like, we can do a roll call vote if which is usually if it's a situation like this, that's helpful. Joshua, do you want a roll call vote?
And Carrie, I wasn't necessarily asking for roll call, just ask how many were against it also, and how many are abstaining, that's all.
Certainly. All right, let's show a show of hands for people who are at this time not in favor of passing this on to the City Council in its current form as a recommendation.
Okay, I see five members.
I think I saw 6, but
Okay.
all
Can you put
right.
your hands up for one more, just for clarity? One more time, thank you. Okay, Woody, your hand was lost in the trees. Okay, that is 6.
All right. I'm trying to move this one along so that we can get to further pieces on the agenda. In that interest, are we okay with putting this back to the working group to refine the proposal in light of the political complexity of the history on this, or do we need to formalize a motion on that front? Jerry?
You need a motion on that front.
All right. McKenna?
I'll make a motion that we request that the Energy Working Group fill out the equity framework document on this proposal, and that we request the outreach committee to weigh in on strategies for bringing it forward.
I will second that. Any discussion on this, Jerry?
I have discussion on it. I think it would be better for this to go to the equity group instead of the energy group. Since they're focused on equity, it would make sense for them to discuss it and find the points that need to be clarified. That might go back to the energy group.
I believe we had adopted an ethic previously that all of us and all of our proposals would be using the equity working framework, and that it was not something that would be consigned specifically to only that working group. Just a comment. Woody, please.
Yeah, right. That's basically what I was going to say. The whole point of it was that we would have a tool that each committee for each proposal that you're looking at would screen the proposal through that assessment tool, not that you would punt it over to the equity committee. We all need to become as expert as we can on issues of social justice and equity.
Well said. Jerry, further comment or discussion?
Yeah, and the clarification I have was that when I voted for that, my understanding was that every proposal that we had would be filtered through that, not necessarily which group would filter it.
Diana.
Yeah, I just say that for the equity framework, which we're going off on a tangent here a bit, to be effective and to be tested appropriately, it needs to be applied by every single group that's involved with Climate Action Committee. So no, I feel that, as Woody expressed, that the plan is for anyone who is implementing in this group any sort of policy to do an examination of whether the equity framework is appropriate and whether that policy passes the equity framework test. Thank you.
Thank you. Luke?
I'll echo Diana and just say that if we were to have multiple subcommittees working on items such as that, it could potentially reach a quorum issue. So thank you.
Duly noted as well. All right, at this time, I would like to try to move in a vote on the motion.
Wait, do you have a second?
1,000, yes. Jerry.
No. Do you have a second for the motion? I only heard it first.
I personally seconded the motion as soon as it happened, yes. So at this time, I would like to call a vote on sending this item back to the energy group for a little bit more work on the equity framework angle of the proposal. All in favor, please put a hand up. Two, four, six.
We have 8, so the motion passes.
Okay, the motion passes. All right, I believe we are done with that action item for now, unless anybody else has urgent commentary or clarifying questions. Also, any further comment from the public on that action item before we move on? Kenna?
I'm not the public. But I had asked if there was anybody in the larger group who was willing or able to weigh in on what groups as the Energy Working Committee, should be consulting in filling out the equity framework.
I am not sure how many people are on the energy group and the equity group. Is it possible for those two groups to confer without exceeding a quorum of the general committee? Woody?
I'd be happy to connect with you, Kenna, and also there are some resources at the third page of that whole document is resources, and so you could reach out to some of the groups that are on that resources page.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I understand you right, Woody, you're willing to consult on that subject without necessarily taking it to the whole.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that. At this time, I would like to move on to our next agenda item, which is to say chair reports. On that subject in particular, I'd like to recognize Kenna for presenting our group to the City Council at a previous meeting. Kenna, if you could just give us a little bit of a report back on how that went.
Yes, so some of you were able to make it. Thank you for coming. I was able to redo the PowerPoint that I had shown to you guys with some refinements based on your feedback, and then with some additional refinements based on a conversation that the facilitation group had with some council members and our CPA not long prior to the meeting. So that was helpful. I think that the council really responded well to the fact that we basically told them, hey, you asked us to do this cap for you, and we can't do it. And so they were very open to looking at other models for how we might be providing and getting the guidance that we want for those things. And I think that the takeaway from when RCPA came to the larger committee meeting was kind of, oh, it seems like they can't do very much for us. But they're very much invested in providing us with support. And one of the things that they said that other municipalities are doing is, rather than trying to create a cap on their own, they are including the cap in the general plan update as one process. Our general plan is fairly new and does have some guidance in it. And Carrie has expressed a willingness to present to this committee about kind of how the general plan works. So she's going to be on our agenda at an upcoming meeting to talk more about that. But that seems like a model of use of resources that might make more sense for a city our size. One of the other things that was really hopeful, and council members may have, or Carrie may have more to say about this, but our CPA offered to host a Civic Spark Fellow if the city decided to hire a Civic Spark or apply for a Civic Spark Fellow who would be kind of a dedicated intern for working on climate issues with the city of Sebastopol, but our CPA is willing and able to provide the hosting and mentorship for that individual. So those were the two exciting takeaways from the meeting. In my opinion, I don't know if anyone else was there and feels like they had something else to say. But council was very appreciative of the efforts of everyone in the group, and I really want to pass that on to all of you.
Great. Thanks very much, Kenna. Much appreciated on that. Are there questions, comments, discussions on chair reports? Jerry?
Kenna, just a fast one. That was an interesting comment as to how to fund the cap, because essentially when Sunnyvale did its first cap, it was done in conjunction with the update of the general plan, and the elements of the general plan were then modified based on what, the cap, and the cap was supporting the general plan. The update to the cap, which happens more frequently because you're trying to do actions, that followed later, but that's a lot less work than doing the initial cap and having all the actions listed out.
Sarah?
Thank you. I'm just wondering if this group is interested in the Civic Spark internship opportunity. and what this group would suggest be the focus of that civic spark, having done all the initial work to the council's last meeting, getting a summary report. What does this group think is the next most important step doable by a one-year intern who could be housed at the RCPA? But then we also have Carrie, who would need to be to some degree monitoring this person's work. Yeah. Would a Civic Spark intern help? On what task?
Speaking briefly from the chairing level of functionality, I think it's been a little bit of our feeling that city staff was a little bit overburdened by some of our requests from the committee, and that having another person in some capacity who could help some of our requests for information or research or things like that. I do appreciate that you acknowledge that Carrie would bear some burden in supporting that role as well. And so I'm definitely interested in hearing commentary on that. I do also want to acknowledge that we're starting to run out of time in the overall meeting. And so if we can stay focused on the subject of chair reports and not launch into other things, that would be great. And I see hands from Diana and back to Sarah and Carrie.
Yeah, I'm just going to suggest that that's a great agenda item for our next meeting.
Thank you. Carrie?
I was actually going to say the same thing. So the Civic Spark, I actually think it would be a great program to advance some particular projects for this committee. I know they want not just, sort of staff support kind of a role, but they do want some beefier projects for that intern to take on, and that could be something like the framework. But I would would probably want some help from one or two members from this group in putting together the application. I believe it's through the end of June. And so I would request if there's a desire from this committee that it be agendized at the next meeting so that we have enough time to work through and move forward with the application.
Great, thank you, Carrie. Sarah, anything further on the subject?
Thank you, Carrie. This is, I want everyone to know, the first experience I've had with the RCPA being so generous with its time and money and space. Tanya actually said and confirmed in email that they would house this person if we don't have room at City Hall. This person may want to work at home anyway, but I just want to say that was a great and unusual outreach from the regional agency to the small city of Sebastopol.
Great, thank you for that. If there's no further pressing comment or questions on that, I would like to move forward, assuming that we will take up that subject again on a future agenda. Our remaining agenda item, more or less, is working group reports, and then into any further suggestions for the next meeting agenda. I'd like to recognize specifically Lisa of the funding working group, because we are queuing up a proposal of hers for the next agenda on utility users tax. There's been an initial handout on that, but we haven't addressed it formally yet. So again, anything briefly from any of the working groups that want to make reports or suggestions at this time, perhaps starting with Lisa.
Well, thanks. I'm aware that if we are going to be trying to do something about this Civic Spark idea, which is really interesting, I think, that it's a pretty tight timeline for us figuring out what kind of projects we'd want to be pursuing. And so I think that the utility users tax is something that we'd love to get on the agenda, but it's not a pressing matter. And so maybe it can be kicked down the road a bit.
Thank you for your flexibility on that. Appreciate it. Anyone else with updates from the working groups? This time, not required, totally optional. Sarah Elliott, please.
Yeah, so I just want to update on the Upcycle Community Art Project. Sunali and I had a meeting to brainstorm themes for it, and we had a lot of youth that came, so that was really exciting. And then I think we're going to start, I think Alex and Sunali are going to start working on a proposal for the committee and for the city council in the future. So Alex can speak on that. But yeah.
Perfect. One other quick thing that I know there's in the works that we've been corresponding with Kenna is setting up some people in the industry that are related to climate change whether that be discussion within our group, if that's something that folks want in terms of bettering their climate education within our climate action group, and or using that resource to educate the city in terms of open to the public discussion, to just educate our citizens about, climate and how they can either be working in climate action or just in how they can improve their climate friendliness in their day-to-day lives. So thank you.
Thank you. And Woody. Woody, a hand? Is Woody frozen? I am trying to call on Woody and not getting anything. Screen shuffle. All right. Any other working group reports or items in that respect? Any comments or questions on working groups issues, including from the public this time? Okay, thank you. Any further suggestions in Zeno? Was there a comment coming in there?
Yeah, is there a list of who belongs to what working group somewhere online?
There is a roster. I don't know if it's online, Kenna.
There's been some shuffling of working groups, at least a little bit that I'm aware of, and that's one of the questions why I asked that on the survey, and I haven't yet compiled it back into these are the working groups that people think they're. We have a theoretical one, and then we have people's own identification. So I haven't done the cross-reference yet to make sure that we actually know. And then I guess once we have that, it'll be more of an opportunity to put that either on the website or figure out how we want to increase our transparency with the public around what our working groups are doing.
So in particular, is there like a transportation group that meets regularly? Is there?
Can folks raise their hand if you're on the transportation group? I maybe know one or two names. Okay. Transportation, Woody, Luke, and Alex. So I'm sure you could email one of those folks for an update on it if need be. Woody, you're back and with your hand again.
Right, and actually it's funny because I don't know what I missed, but I was actually raising my hand to speak, say a few words for the transportation group. And we have had some scheduling difficulties over the last few weeks, but we are scheduled to meet on Wednesday, June 2nd. So looking forward to that. And one of the items I talked to with the group is about Sebastopol. Did I again? Everybody looks frozen. Anyway, so yeah, we're gonna be meeting soon. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks. My internet's really bad.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there has been some mention of items for the next agenda, any other suggestions for the next meeting's agenda or further meetings? Yes, Lisa.
So I'm wondering if there's been more results, Kenna, of the poll that you sent out for us, about suggestions for the group. I'd like to hear if maybe next time what we learned from that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Diana and Sarah.
Yeah, I'd love to have us discuss from the perspective of transparency and public engagement, what changes we might want to see on the web page. So for instance, I'm interested in considering whether the action items should be posted, whether the equity matrix should be posted, whether the facilitation team members should be identified, and whether the work group members should be identified. And then, so if we could put that on the website, on the agenda for discussion, that would be great. And then I also just want to share that for website modification purposes, Rebecca Mansour is our contact.
Thank you. Sarah?
Okay, I just wanted to announce that there is a potential opening on the RCPA's Advisory Action Committee. Right now, Steve Pierce is our member. His term is expiring. He's said to me personally, he's marginally interested in continuing. He'll definitely cover the July meeting if we don't have a successful applicant. And the deadline, I believe, is June 18th with an potential interview date on June 23rd, although that would be a specially set meeting. So right now, those are tentative dates.
Okay.
And I don't know if anyone on this group is interested in participating. That's what Zeno is on. And I thought you should all know.
Thank you for that. All right, if people are content with the input on the action item, or I'm sorry, the future agendas, our last regular agenda item would be review of action items. Kenna, you are muted.
Yes, so the Energy Working Group will work on the matrix, the equity matrix. The Outreach Group will continue working on their proposal for the event, as well as hopefully discuss any strategic ideas about the smart meter issue. The Funding Group is continuing their work on the utility users tax. Carrie is working on the application for Civic Spark, and I have offered to help her. I'm looking at what else I wrote down. And then I need to compile those survey results so that I can provide you guys with a comprehensive report out next time.
Okay.
Carrie, did you have something?
Yeah, in our packet, we were handed that one thing on the utility tax. Is that something we're supposed to work on, make a comment on, or is that just general information?
That was sort of a prequel, if you will. It was something that was in the upcoming agendas, and yeah, we were considering whether we would have time to take that one up at this meeting. It's sort of why it showed up in the packet. But there's
okay. So when those things are sent to us, if somebody could let us know what we're supposed to do with them, and some of them are pretty obvious. That one wasn't. When I looked at the agenda, I was looking for it and trying to figure out where it fit in.
Right.
And if it's just as background, study this and work out your questions for the future, then that would be good.
On my part, I do try to indicate in the agenda items when there is a handout associated with that agenda item. So sometimes there's an extra, just what with the handoffs. And presuming that utility tax will come up on a future agenda, it will be attached again in that agenda packet. With
Carrie, with the Planning Commission, did you have some place in the agenda where you just said we handed you this stuff as general information? I forgot how you did that.
So one of the things we can do is just, if it's not for an agenda item, is we can just send it out as a separate piece of information, which I know, like I just sent the Planning Commission, the RENA draft allocations. It just came out a couple of days ago, and I just do it as a separate email. If any of the committee members want that, they can certainly send them to Rebecca Mansour. Her email's on the website if you don't know it. But she can always, you can just request, hey, can you send this to the full CAC, and she'll do that for you. So that's not a problem. Otherwise, I mean, we can put a catch-all on the agenda, but I typically don't do that as a piece.
Great, thank you. Carrie, anything to report from the planning department? I just noticed that we have a standing.
I have 3 quick things. They're all related to this committee. I'll save any future stuff for future meetings. One is just a note that the AB 965 support letter will be going to council at the June 1st meeting. It is not on consent, it is on the regular item. That's a discussion item because the budget was moved to June 15th. So I would like to make sure there's a liaison from this committee who can attend that and answer any questions or discussion items from the council. June 15th is the City Council's budget hearing. And so in terms of the City Spark, the Civic Spark application, that will be after your next meeting, but that is a cost of about $30,000 to the city. And so that's something that would need to be allocated by the city budget. We can apply without it. It doesn't say that you need a funding commitment to do the application, but obviously if council doesn't do it, we can save time on the workload if it's not approved by council. And then the other note is that the 3 openings for the CAC, the youth, the business, and the equity position are closing soon, but we do not have any applications yet. So please, please, please do outreach. It does take staff time and resources, newspaper notices and all that kind of stuff to do these. So it would be really great if we could get some applications in for those.
Thank you for that. Okay, trying to close the meeting, but Woody, I see your hand.
I just quick, I mean, maybe I can follow up with you later, Corey. I don't understand why they're closing. Why can't they remain open until filled?
So the city's standard process is to hold any vacancy open for 6 weeks and then close it. If there are no applications, it automatically gets extended for 2 weeks. So that'll likely happen in this case. And then that will be the new deadline. And hopefully we get some applications at that time. But that's the city's standard practice for all committees.
Okay, I'll follow up on that later.
Thank you. All right, we are essentially out of time, but Diana, I see your hand if there's any closing bits. All right, unless we have any emergency last minute thoughts or questions, thanks everyone for making it through all of this. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.